Hey guys, it's Miss O, and in this video I want to go over how to set up a document in Microsoft Word for an APA 6th edition style paper. So the version of Microsoft Word that I'm using is Microsoft Word 2011 for Mac. So there's a couple of elements that might look a little bit different if you're using a PC or if you're using an older version. But for the most part, most of the stuff is going to remain the same as far as some of the menus that I'm using and the commands and things like that. And it's pretty basic once you start to get the hang of it. So I've just opened up a new document here in Microsoft Word. It's blank. I've got my cursor blinking there. And I actually have my ribbon on the Layout tab so that I can show you where we're going to start, which is with the actual page setup itself. For APA style, all pages need to have 1-inch margins on all sides. So for my margins under Layout, I'm just going to select the normal setting here. Mine is also underneath my last custom setting, but it should default for 1-inch margins on all sides when you click on the normal setting. And it says here top 1, left 1, bottom 1, right 1. So we've got 1-inch margins on all sides. The next thing that we're going to do is start plugging in some of the elements that are necessary for an APA style paper. And because this is the first page that we're working on, these elements are going to be for the title page. So we're going to insert things like a running head and a page number, as well as some of the identifying elements that belong on your title page. So there are a few ways that we can access the header, but one of the easiest and universal ones that's probably going to work for you on your computer is if you go to View and you select Header and Footer. Then that brings us into the Header and Footer field. And on the ribbon, you'll notice that we have a tab that's devoted to Header and Footer as well, which you should select because we need this. The very first thing that you want to do is under Options, click the box that says Different First Page. And it's really important that you do that first, because if you start modifying your header at this point and then you click Different First Page afterwards, then it's going to take out everything that you put in there, and that's going to be really frustrating for you. Okay, so for APA style papers, on the very first page you have what's called the running head, and you actually have the words running head that appear before it, and there's a colon, and then in all caps is a shortened version of whatever it is you plan to title your paper. So this is not the actual title of your paper itself, but this is a shortened version of that. So you should have an idea of what it is that you plan to call your paper prior to entering all this stuff for the running head. But I'm just going to take some of the information that is from my Computer Fundamentals textbook to use for this example. So for my running head, I'm going to type triangulation paper. And you'll notice that the actual running head itself, this part here that is the shortened version of the title of my paper, this actually appears in all caps, but the words running head do not. They're written in standard convention for English writing. So after I've got that written there, the last thing we need to put into the header is the page number, and I'm kind of kicking myself because I think this is going to, oh, no it didn't, perfect. Okay, so what I did was I just pressed tab to move the cursor over to the right hand side of the screen because the page number goes in the upper right corner. And under the header and footer where I have this little tray for insert, I just clicked on page number and it inserted it for me. So those are all of the elements that belong on my first page, and I'm done with this. So in order to get out of this header field and into the body of this page, I'm just going to double click out of it, and you'll see that it is gray there, that term dithered. It's gray, you can't really access it here. If you do want to touch it, you can just double click and voila, it comes back. But for now we're finished with that, so we can start moving further down the page to put some of the other elements onto this title page that are necessary. So there's some discrepancy with different templates for APA 6th edition, as well as what different professors or instructors will specify as elements that they want to have on an APA style paper. But the common elements that have to be there are you have to include a title for your paper, you have to include student name, you also have to include the name of the institution that you attend. There are other elements that can be included on a title page, but they are not standard to always be included on a title page for APA 6th edition. So I'm just going to type up this title page as I would for one that I would expect a student to turn in my class. So APA specifies that there should be about a 2-inch gap between your running head and where some of these title elements start. So I'm just pressing enter to move down here, and I can kind of keep track based off of the ruler on the left-hand side of my screen to see where my cursor is lining up, which it looks like I'm 2 inches out. And I don't know that your instructor is necessarily going to pull out a ruler and measure per se, but we do want this to resemble an APA style paper. So just moving it down a little bit to put a bit of a gap between the running head and some of your page elements is a good idea. I'm going to center my text here so that I can start typing some of these elements. So the first thing I'm going to type is the title of my paper. And again, I'm pulling this stuff from my Computer Fundamentals book. So the title I'm going to put here is Location Through Triangulation. I'm going to press enter, and one thing that I want you to note is that my line spacing is double spaced here. So if you have a single space line spacing when you get to this portion, oops, that just went away. There it is, it's back again. I'm going to backspace to come back up here. So if after you type this and you press enter, you notice that you have single spacing, you can just back up, put the cursor at the end of this line again. You can triple click, and then you will get the menu for paragraph. And under paragraph is where you can change your line spacing from single to double. For some reason mine says single here, even though I know I changed it to double. So I'm just going to put double back. Okay, so after the title is student name. So I'm just going to put my name here. After student name comes the course code and title. So your course code is whatever the code is for the class that you're in. We're going to pretend this is my Computer Fundamentals class, and I'm just going to put APP 101, Computer Fundamentals. You want to put the institution name that you are attending. So here is where I'm going to type the school that I teach Computer Fundamentals for. And then the very last thing that you want to put is the date. And sometimes, depending on your professor, this might be the date that the paper itself is due, or this might just be the date that you started writing the paper. So I am going to use the date for today, just because this is for the sake of example. And Microsoft Word helps you to auto-format the date in there as soon as you start typing the month. So that's that, and that's kind of what the elements look like centered on your page like that. They just they're centered here, there's double spacing in between them. When it comes to typing out the institution name, instead of writing UCI or SDSU or UF or CCSD in a case like this, you want to actually spell out the school name to make it more complete and more formal. Now, sometimes your instructor might ask that you include their name on your title page. Not completely out of the ordinary for them to do so. I know that I have asked my students to do so in the past. And what you're going to want to do is type your instructor's name completely. So this is first and last name. And then you're also going to include your instructor's credentials when you do this. So this is going to look kind of funny because I'm both the student as well as the instructor for this example. But I'm just going to type out my first and last name. And then for my credentials, you put excuse me, you put a comma after my last name, and then you type capital M period, capital A period, and that stands for Master of Arts. You should always check with your instructor to find out what their credentials are so that you include accurate ones on the paper. Because everyone's credentials are different. So some people might have an MS, some people might have a PhD or an EdD. It just depends on what their discipline is and what it is that they went to school for, how far they went in school. So make sure that you check with them to find out what those credentials are before including them. But that's it for your title page. You've got your running head, where it's supposed to be, the way that it's supposed to appear, page number in the upper right hand corner, all of these details that are necessary, the title, the student name, the class with the course code, the institution you're attending, the date, and the instructor's name. At this point, we can move forward to the next page, and a really nice and succinct way to do that without pressing enter a bunch of times. If you're on a PC, you could press Control Enter. If you're on a Mac, like I am, you can press Command Shift Return, and then that'll take you down to the next page. But we have a bit of a problem because on this next page we have nothing but a blank page here. There's no header up here at the top of the page, and there's supposed to be. Just like we have one that's up here, it's dithered, but it's up there and it's a part of our paper, we also need to have these elements carry through for the remainder of the paper. So just like we did before, I'm just going to go to View, Header and Footer. And again, I'm going to insert my running head in the upper left-hand corner of this page. There's going to be a little bit of a difference though, because instead of putting running head triangulation paper, I'm just going to type triangulation paper up here. And I'm going to press Tab to move my cursor back over to the right-hand corner, and I'm going to insert the page number in the upper right-hand corner. And I just want to make a note too that it's really important that you use this page number command in Microsoft Word for inserting the page number. You don't want to just type the number in here. So if I were to just type the number 2, that is an unformatted piece of text, and so what's going to happen is moving forward from this page, the running heads are all going to say 2 in the upper right hand corner rather than counting in succession, because I have formatted this field to have the page number, and the page number will count automatically because Microsoft Word will do that for you. So make sure that when you insert the page number, you're actually using that command that Microsoft Word gives you. Otherwise, it's not going to appear properly on every page going forward as you do this. So these are all of the elements that I need up here. I'm going to double click out of this so I can get back to the body of my paper. And what you're going to notice now, I'm going to press Command Shift Enter, or excuse me, Command Shift Return on the Mac. And I've moved forward to page number 3. I have my running head up here, triangulation paper, and you'll notice it says page 3. If I move forward to page 4, it says page 4, so it's counting in succession for me. It's also keeping this running head static on pages 2 and above, but the running head looks different on the title page. Remember that box that we checked at the very beginning that said different first page? This is the reason why. And this is per APA standard. So per APA standard, the title page, the very first page, has the word running head with the running head up there. And then the running head itself is in all caps, page number in the upper right, but every page after that just has the running head itself and then the page number up there. And that's all that this is supposed to contain. Sometimes people get really fancy with the way that they want the page number to appear. They might put their last name up here, they might put colors, they might put shading and things like that, but none of that stuff is APA standard. It's pretty cut and dry. We've got running heads and page numbers, and that's all that needs to appear on the headers. So moving forward, generally page 2 for an APA style paper is treated as an abstract. This is where your abstract would be located. And an abstract, for those of you who don't know, is a summary or a synopsis of what your paper contains. Abstracts are very useful when you have a longer piece of work, because it kind of gives the reader a glimpse into what the work contains without them having to read through all 50, 60, 70, 80 pages of what's written there. But with shorter works, abstracts usually are not required, just because if it's a 5-paragraph essay and you include an abstract, chances are the abstract is just going to be a repeat of whatever the introduction says. Similarly, you know, if it's like a 2-page paper, same thing, 3-page paper, it's a little bit too short to have the paper content and then also include an abstract on top of that. So for most of my courses that I teach, which tend to be the general education courses and some of the lower division classes like 200 and 300 level, I don't include abstracts as part of the assignments that my students do for their papers. But for some of the longer works, you might be asked to include one. And again, that abstract is just going to be a summary of your work. But if your paper does not require that you include an abstract, then you can start writing the introduction of your paper at the very top of page 2. And so you'll notice that I moved my cursor back over because it was in the center after I brought it down from the title page, because all of our text here was in the center. So I moved it back over to left justified so that I can start typing my text there. And this is where I would begin typing the body of my paper. After the body of your paper has been typed, the only other thing that gets included with your paper is what's called a reference page in APA 6th edition, and so this is going to include all of your citations for any outside works that you referenced while you were typing your paper. And I think this is a really good place to stop because now you have the basic setup for what your paper is supposed to look like, and I will talk to you in the next video about how to create citations for your paper through Microsoft Word and how to format them properly to APA 6th edition.